Tonga to kick off in their second rugby international against Australia here at Ballymore in Brisbane. Kicking off for Tonga, number 15, the fullback, Valita Ma'ake. The referee is Mr. Bob Burnett in his first test match. Out here to Malakai along the back line straight away. And caught in midfield is the new centre, Tali Kavapalu. And the Australians driving through about 10 metres inside the Tongan half. Good heel by Australia. Richardson across to Burnett, and Burnett well tackled. Now a chance for the Tongans. They're breaking away. This bounce is important here. This is Tali back in field to a bad pass, or not a bad pass, but knocked down, and it's advantage rule, and driven downfield over halfway. Here's Valita. Valita the fullback, and Valita's kick is just over halfway. Sullivan for Australia, number 7. And stopped by referee Burnett for the first scrum of the match, just over halfway in Australian territory. And in that first exchange, Tonga may have scored in that little exchange on the far side.
3 or 4 Tongan players all lined up there, just couldn't handle the ball quickly enough, but had players to burn. Great opportunity for them.
Tongan ball, Haunga working the blind side, and away goes Haunga. The halfback's a great little player. Here he is back in field to Mafi, and Mafi could score. It's a try to Tonga. Well, there's a great effort. Little halfback, Haunga straight through, linking up with his captain Mafi. A great tie, and Tonga in front by 4 points to 0, a minute and a half into the game.
Well, it was a great try. Haunga has been probably one of the stars, and of course the try scorer, Mafi, has been the real star of the tour. But the little halfback raced away well. The cover defence was not there. Sullivan was there, but was not quick enough. The lock forward was missing. And then, of course, Mafi was backing up inside. It was a good pass, and it was as simple as that. No cover defence from Australia whatsoever.
The attempted conversion by the fullback Valita, well, that certainly is the best start by the Tongans in the whole tour as far as we're concerned. And I should think that the Tongans will make the most today of these fine and fairly warm conditions. This is the first time in Brisbane. Of course, they haven't performed so well in the cold weather. They made a very spectacular start against Sydney at North Sydney Oval, but this is the first time we've seen them come out in more pleasant conditions, and they've really started off with a bounce. It was a great try.
Great try, and will give them a lot of heart so early in the match, just on a couple of minutes gone. And of course, if this goes over, what a great start for Tonga.
And not a bad kick. I think it's just wide and short. So after just 2.5 minutes of play, Tonga leads Australia, and there's the score. There's the score, 4-0.
We can expect the Australian forwards to come pouring back. You noticed early in the first minute, they came charging right down in good form.
The girls drop out for Australia. Underneath it, Hehepoto, who led the tribal dance. Here's Haunga again, back to Mafi. 10 metres inside the Tongan half. And look at the Australian forwards driving through hard. Richardson for Australia. Haunga again. That's up to halfway and bouncing towards touch, and in touch it goes.
Well, once again, you saw the pressure of the Australian forwards very early in the match. We only have about 5 minutes of play. The Australians obviously now, after that quick try by Tonga, are going to tighten things up a little bit and see if they can get on top in the forwards.
And some wild play in the forwards. There's Tyndall taking it through on the toe. And into touch. And a clash between some of the players there. 2 of the forwards being called out by referee Burnett.
Garrick Fay and
number
Tupi
4.
Norman, but Garrick Fay and Fakahau Tupi were the 2 persons having a little bit of a wrestle.
Play about 10 metres inside the Tongan half. Stevens, the throw-in for Australia. And a penalty here against the Tongan inside backs. and a scoring chance for Australia. This could be a kick at goal. It's about 10 metres out from the 25, and fullback McGill is being called up. Looking around the Tongan team, I noticed in the program they have Kefu playing an inside centre, number 12, but I'm almost certain that's Foliaki. Looking at them out on the field there, the Tongans could deceive us all with the identification of players, but certainly number 12 is not the tall Kefu.
No.
I'm fairly certain we go ahead with Foliaki, Trevor.
I would think so, Norm. I hadn't noticed, but it certainly looks like Foliaki. Now here's McGill coming up to take the kick. Not a difficult kick. Wind is a little bit of a problem today. It's rather blustery and coming a little bit from the more or less a crossfield, but this will give us an idea of what effect the wind has on the carry of the ball today. He's about 15 metres in from the touch.
And McGill's kick is wide of the post, so no change in score. Tonga leads Australia by 4 points to 0, and we've had just 5 minutes of play in the first half. Drop out held up in the breeze, which is fairly strong. Now this wind is coming from the left-hand side as we see it. It would be a nor'wester here in Brisbane. At the moment, not blowing so strongly. In fact, it appears to have swung round to the far side, but still the wind is going to play some part in this game.
Quite a gusty wind. It comes and goes.
Richardson, the far side. Extra man in the back line is McGill, and a knock-on, so that should stop play. Let's see what happens. Yes, referee Burnett bringing play back to the 22-metre line. It's still Tongan territory for the set scrum. Australians getting much extra weight, or more weight than the Tongans, of course, pushing them right back in that scrum.
Tongan scrum collapsed there, not tight enough, and allowing the Australian pack to push them back. They are collapsing again, but they may have got this one.
Haunga to Malakai, and Malakai back to his forwards to Haunga. A chance for the Australians here onto this loose ball. This is Tyndall, back to Stegman. No, that's the winger on the far side, Cole. And Cole dumbing his way through. Cole still going. Now the Australians wanting a good heel. To the far side goes Tyndall. Tyndall to, who's on this side, Richardson. Richardson has Stevens with him. Stevens following through on this. It's down close to the line. And the ball's close there. Who's onto it? The hooker. No try. And still play on goes the winger. This is Isikeli. And Isikeli's kick is coming up over the 22-metre line. And into touch it goes. Well, Australia could have scored then, but the Tongans getting out of trouble.
Well, 2 or 3 Australians had a chance of scoring there, but Isikeli was umpire, came across, got the ball and hooked it well downfield. Howard, the Australian forward, started a ruck there very well. And this is what the Australians will endeavour to do. Pull the ball into rucks, try and make all the Tongan players come to the ruck and hold it for a while.
Long line out. The back there is the new breakaway for the Tongans. That's number 7, Selupe. But ruled not in straight by referee Burnett, a set scrum. Scrum about 12 metres or so inside the Tongan half. Sami Latu on this wing to McGill for Australia, and not in touch Mafi, and Mafi the captain driving it upfield to halfway. Now McGill thinking of lining this one up. It's going straight up in the air and into touch about 26 or 7 metres out from the Tongan line. That's the 22-metre line on the left-hand side. Tonga in front by 4 points to 0, 10 minutes gone. Richardson. And well taken by Malakai, his opposing number. This is Stegman, number 12, to Lestrange. Cole on the far side, Cole for the corner, and making the tackle, the leader, good tackle.
Well, a good tackle, I would think, would be an understatement. That was a magnificent tackle there. Cole was a very quick runner, and I thought Cole would skirt round, but Valita, with a magnificent tackle, brought him to ground.
Haunga in trouble, carried right to the line. And the Tongans in fairly desperate defence now, the scrum right on their own goal line.
Australians have been putting the pressure on Tonga for about the last 6 minutes. Tonga not very happy at the moment, can't clear their line.
And possibly a try. Now that's a try to the halfback Tyndall, who's gone round. So Tyndall has scored a try for Australia. He's the one man who can follow the ball around the scrum, so that makes it 4 points all, and Tyndall has scored for Australia.
Well, far from a spectacular try, but Tyndall is a player noted, particularly in Sydney, playing for his club at Drummoyne, of being a very adept player at coming around close to a ruck or scrum and harassing his opposite number. And it looked as though the Tongan halfback had the ball, but Tyndall was there and very quickly onto the ball.
Now McGill to take the attempted conversion way over on the far side of the field. Not an easy kick, but of course, if successful, it will put Australia in front. And that kick is just wide of the post, so the score is 4 points all. And there it is, the indicator clock showing 12 minutes gone. So Eric Tyndall, the new halfback for Australia, playing in his first international match, scoring a try and was first scorer.
Well, the kick wasn't a bad one, but it didn't, of course, raise the flags. McGill has been kicking quite well throughout the season. He's had 2 so far in this match, of course, and neither was successful.
Valita's kick from fullback is right up over the 22-metre line. This is Richardson for Australia, and he'll find touch. Not a good kick. It goes right back to the 22-metre line for the line-out.
It's Tonga's ball for the line-out. A chance for them to see if they can get possession, and this is the first time they've been in the Australian quarter for a long time.
And through his legs it goes, out to the centres. Here's Foliaki to Tali back to Foliaki. The Australians forming a fairly good ruck here. That's Cox who took it down out to Lestrange, to Stegman, to Cole again, and the fullback McGill's with him. Back in defence is a second row, but McGill taking it through and into touch, about 20 metres out from the Tongan line.
So now Australia back into a very favourable position once again. The wind, if anything, I think must be favouring Australia. It's more or less directly across the field, but I get the impression the way the ball has been kicked that it's favouring the Australians a little bit.
Haunga, his kick going straight up in the air. And that should become a scrum to pack down just inside the Tongan 22-metre line. 15 minutes into the first half. 4 all the score. And a penalty going to Australia. And an offside ruled there against the halfback. Well, this is an easy kick. It's almost right in front.
And I would think that the halfback was a little unlucky there. He thought that ball was going to come out fairly quickly. He came out quickly, realised it was coming out quickly, and applied the brakes, but not quite quick enough. It was a very near thing, and here you can see the distance of this kick. This would be the easiest kick that McGill has had. It's just inside the 22-metre mark. He's about 10 metres to the offline from the centre of the post. Fairly simple kick.
And that's a goal to Australia, so Australia in front for the first time in the match. 7-4 the score, and we see just over 15 minutes gone.
Well, Australia finally hit the front. About 15 minutes of play gone, and Tonga scored very early in about 3 minutes after the start of the game. We thought that perhaps this might have been the thing that they really wanted. They haven't had many chances since then, and they will have to get back into the game with doing more with the possession.
Gregory underneath the kick-off for Australia. Now Richardson, his kick angled across halfway. Out here to Sami Latu. Sami Latu, well taken by Lestrange, the Australian centre. Line out 15 metres inside the Australian half. For the Tongans, the captain Mafi standing out behind the centres, out behind the back line. So Tongans packing in, or having 7 forwards in this line out. Richardson, and there's his angle kick. Here's Valita, full-back. And that kick driven out by the wind. Now, we saw a lot of that in the earlier match here. Any ball kicked around that area on the field seems to be blown away to the left-hand side. Although, as we see it now, the flags on top of the scoreboard are not even moving. So it's a very fluky sort of wind. Sometimes it's blowing, sometimes it's not.
Australian pack very consistent in getting the ball from the rucks that are being formed. Richardson kicking a lot, but he was criticised for this last week, but the opposite centres are getting up very quick once again.
And the Australians driving in to form a good ruck here. Breaking away is Graham, the front rower, to Lone, and Lone crash tackled by the fullback Valita. And we've seen Valita do that before on this tour. Out to Richardson, Stegman, Lestrange, and onto the ball. Who's onto this one? It's loose on the 22-metre line, but stopped by referee Burnett. And once again, we saw a really fine tackle by the fullback, and one of the Australians is down on the field, or down on the ground. And who's that? That's the halfback Tyndall.
Valita throughout the tour has shown us that he is a splendid tackler. There was a magnificent tackle early in the match when he got cold, but throughout the tour has shown us that he can tackle from more or less all angles. Very competent defensive player.
Penalty Tonga. This is the first penalty I can remember going to them in the match so far. A couple of ones to Australia. They've had 2 shots at goal, but the Tongan penalty will be taken by the captain Mafi. He's just inside his own 22-metre line. And into touch almost to halfway.
Well, if the wind should continue and should get any stronger, Australia would be looking for more points than they have on the board by half-time, although we've only had 19 minutes of play.
Now, Tongan's turn. Malakai to Foliaki. Foliaki, the grubber kick through, and McGill, full-back for Australia, driving it over on this side, and he's beating the fullback Valita, and into touch right down towards the 22-metre line.
The ball kicked along, giving the indication of the wind, I would say, fairly well behind that ball. So I think it's a little bit stronger than we imagine at this stage. As I said earlier, hard to tell you about it because it's so gusty.
And who's on the loose ball? That's Lone, the young Queensland player, getting first to it. Richardson now to Stegman. Stegman's short kick. Here's the fullback, Valita. And Valita caught just outside his own line by Lestrange. And very close now if Australia can get this ball. They could be right on the line, they are. Graham breaking away to Tyndall. Tyndall out here to Stegman. Now the Tongans coming through. There's no fullback in position. Play stop by the referee.
little unlucky. One of the players just knocked that ball on very slightly before the other player got his boot to it. And again, as the Australian
moving
push.
backwards. Now here's Valita. Far side to Isikeli. Isikeli getting away from Tyndall. Only the fullback in front. And it's play on and best bouncing off Tyndall. Well, bad luck for Tonga. They just bounced off Tyndall into touch. And that may have been a chance again for the Tongans to score a try.
Yes, it came off the Australian fullback's shoulder, and
yes, fullback Tyndall.
Most
Fullback
unfortunate
McGill,
for them that it only just touched his shoulder. Had it gone over, McGill was in a position where he had no hope of retrieving the ball. Mafi and I think it's Cox seem to be having a little bit of a altercation there. The referee has called Mafi out. Mafi threw a round arm punch, and the referee has given a penalty. Crowd not very happy about it. Once again, the Tongans have the crowd on their side. McGill will take this one. He's going to put this ball down on, as you can see, right on at the 10-metre mark there. And he would be about 10 metres in from the far side. Now the referee, I think, is... I thought he was going to alter over the position, but he's not. So with the wind assistance, whilst it is a fairly long kick, almost back, within 10 metres of halfway, fairly long kick, but well within McGill's range with this assistance from the wind.
And that one from McGill looks a good-looking kick, but just to the right of the upright, so no change to the score. Australia leading Tonga by 7 points to 4, and we've had 22 minutes of play. And that's the third attempt by Australia for penalty goal, because most of the game's being played in Tongan territory, so therefore every penalty is a chance at a score. Of course, the Tongans have not had an attempted goal, it's a penalty goal, yet in the match. Here's Fay breaking away, Garrick Fay, who kicked that field goal to end the match in Sydney last week. And away go the Tongans up over halfway. It's McGill now for Australia. And McGill's kick is still in play. Underneath it is Valita, the fullback. Has support and a knock-on by Valita. Advantage rule being played, but recalled now for the set scrum. And that's the first outright mistake I can remember Valita making.
It was a fairly simple one, but I'm sure he had a little bit of a glance downfield to see where McGill was, and McGill was coming down, and of course that fraction that he took his eye off the ball, well, that was all that mattered.
Now here's Lane, the number 8, back to Richardson, out here to Lestrange, and Lestrange, well tackled by Tali Kavapalu, and the penalty going to Tonga, and that was against the man on the ground. Now the man on the ground under rugby laws must roll away from the ball, and Lestrange certainly did not do that, so a penalty going to Tonga. And Mafi finding touch about 12 metres inside the Tongan half.
25 minutes gone, and Australia not going very well, in my opinion. Don't seem to be able to get cracking in the back line. The defence of their opposite centre is very good at the moment.
And Tyndall caught right on halfway, and Tyndall throwing a player right over his shoulders. Tyndall, a la Japanese judo players. He went through him right over his shoulders, and that was the...
Tyndall had a big brawny arm right across his face, and was quite a headlock, and he decided to put an end to it.
And that's ruled not in straight, so it becomes a set scrum. Fullback McGill joining this movement. Here's McGill coming in. McGill has Cole with him. Cole on the far side. And Cole a knock on, so that will stop play.
Plan moves by Australia there to bring McGill in, and also to miss out one of the centres, and they missed out, I think it was Lestrange. it was all working very well until it got to Cole, who couldn't handle what appeared to be quite a good pass. Very noticeable, the Australian side, when they're in the scrums, how they put the push and are pushing the Tongans away off the ball as much as they can.
Far side to Isikeli. Now his kick was in touch on the full, so back for the line out, and that's just inside the Tongan half. Just under 15 minutes to go to half time, and Australia leading Tonga by 7 points to 4. Garrick Fay jumping high for Australia. Richardson, Stegman getting back in field. Stegman still going, following through on this kick. Underneath it is Isikeli, is it? No, that's Mafi. And Mafi driving clean through. Mafi still going. Out this side, here's Ha'unga along the back line. A great chance here for the Tongans. But now, yes, still going. Here's Ha'unga with Sami Latu. And still going. Latu down almost the 22-metre line. Who's in there? And here's Kavapalu. Tali still going. Tali back in field to the halfback Ha'unga. And into touch it goes, but an excellent movement by the Tongans.
A great movement, and as you heard Norman call it, Ha'unga, the halfback, was in that movement, I would say, 4 times. He gets up, bounces it, and chases the ball. It was an excellent effort by the halfback and by the rest of the side. Very unlucky that they didn't score. Once again, the Australian cover defence was somewhat lacking.
Gregory going high for Australia. Now Ha'unga out to Malakai. And here's Valita on the far side. Sami Latu was there as the extra man. Play right on the Australian 22-metre line. We haven't seen much play in this area of the field. And hardly a Tongan forward in that ruck. Well, there are 8 Australians there, and all the Tongans standing up, and all the Australians on the ground.
Well, once again, an opportunity there for Tonga, and just couldn't go on with the passing. The ball lapsed at the end of the line, but they looked as though they were going to score. Coming back into the game a lot. Australia falling away a little bit.
Working to the far side to McGill. And McGill from just inside his 22-metre line, finding a good touch. He's taken play up over halfway.
Good kick by McGill. Gave Australia the relief that they were certainly looking for, because the last couple of minutes it's been mostly Tonga.
Away go the Tongans again. That's the second round. Tuihalamaka. Ha'unga's still there, and Ha'unga might get a good bounce here. Ha'unga's still going. He's going to the corner and back in field to one of his centres and knocked on. Foliaki's there. He's over the line, but knocked on. And once again, it was the halfback, Ha'unga Fonua, who made the real break. What a good player.
Tremendous break, and it was only lack of pace that didn't get him there. Tyndall was close on his heels, and Tyndall caught up with him, of course, but in desperation, over the head it came.
And a penalty going to Tonga. Now, here's a chance for them. This is in goal-kicking distance. It's only the second penalty I can remember going to them, but the first time they've had a penalty with a chance to kick a goal. And I should think it's, yes, change of kicker. It's going to be Mafi who'll take the shot.
Well, so far through the tour, the Tongan goal kicking has not been great. They've kicked their share, but quite often they look as though that they could do with a little more practice. Mafi stands the ball upright, and this one he'll have to contend with a little bit of breeze coming across from that far corner, and as you can see, he's just outside the quarter line and about 10 metres or 8 metres in from the far touch.
And Mafi's kick is just wide. Touchdown by Stegman for Australia. No change in score. Australia leading Tonga by 7 points to 4. 10 minutes to half time. McGill's drop out. And a scrum to pack down loose head Australia, just out from the Australian 22-metre line. Working to the blind side to Richardson, Cole on the far wing, and Cole met with two defenders. Well, over half an hour gone. I don't think that Stevens, the Australian winger on this side, has handled the ball in the match so far, apart from fouling the line-out. So the ball hasn't really travelled right across the Australian three-quarter line. Ha'unga out to Foliaki in the centres. Foliaki getting straight downfield, linking up with Ha'unga again. And the penalty going to Australia.
The penalty there appeared to be a Tongan forward on the wrong side, on the far side of the ruck.
And for Australia, McGill finding touch just inside the Australian half.
Well, just 8 minutes to go before half-time, and Australia still not going well enough. I feel that they'll probably change their tactics at half-time, but Tonga going very well, and indications are we could have a very entertaining finale for this half and a good one in the second half.
Well, the little man in the middle there was the Tongan hooker Bloomfield, number 2. Here's Stevens, the man we mentioned, scored 2 tries for Australia in the first international match in Sydney last week, but apart from throw the ball into the line-out, he hasn't seen much action so far. And a penalty going to Tonga. Now, I wonder whether this is worth a shot at goal. It's about 8 metres inside the Australian half. It's a long one. Now, the fullback's been called up. That's Valita. If not a place kick, perhaps a drop at goal. Now, it looks like a place kick.
Yes, he's going to have a go. The linesmen have gone round behind the post. Fairly long one, this one. Wind to contend with. He will have a reasonable amount of wind blowing into the face of the ball. But at this stage of the game, probably well worth the effort if he can, or thinks he can do it. Because they have a problem, the Tongans, in as much as that if they did kick into the corner, trying to get themselves into the Australian quarter, there's no guarantee that they're going to win the line out. So it's very difficult for them to keep pressure up all the time. So in this case, Valita, or Mafi, should I say, has elected that Valita have a crack at this one, because if he does kick it, of course, the scores are level and just on about 7 minutes to go before half-time. Quite important to Tonga.
Oh, very poor kick. A long way short. Sullivan for Australia. And Sullivan not finding touch, but Isikeli, that's a knock-on. Back it goes. So Sullivan, in fact, has achieved the result he wanted. He's got it back to halfway, but Isikeli, the winger on the far side, knocking on for Tonga. And Tonga on the ball against the head. Here goes Ha'unga. Ha'unga to the Isikeli on the far side. Isikeli down inside the 22-metre line, and his kick into touch, but he's gained a lot of ground.
Well, they did very well around that blind side. They stood Cole still. Cole didn't know what to do, and he saw Isikeli race straight by him because the little halfback again, Ha'unga, had drawn him and made him stand still.
That's Gregory winning the jump for Australia, number 5, the second rower. To McGill, who's right on his own line. And McGill's kick in touch, taking it out to the Australian 22-metre line. You notice those peculiar objects just hanging down in front of the picture here. We have them here at Ballymore. They're the loudspeakers leading into the grandstand. So if you see something strange in front of the picture, they're the set of loudspeakers right in front of our camera position. The back of the line, Ha'unga again, and Ha'unga still going out here too. Latu goes for the corner. Sami Latu it is, and Sami Latu will score. Yes, try to Sami Latu. Tonga in front by 8 points to 7. The kick to come, and 5 minutes to half-time. And the Tongans have won the line-outs now 8-5, which is very important.
Well, there is Sami Latu, the try scorer, and what a great finish off it was for him and for the Tongan. That was a good backline movement, where quick handling, and they are very good when they get a little bit of room to spin the ball along. And of course, he was thrown beautifully clear by his inside backs. But here again, the Australian cover defence was found lacking. From a position such as that, there ought to be at least 2 or 3 players, and that's the lock forward and the Australian fullback. They should be there knocking the man down as he goes across in that corner. They were well away when Sami Latu went across.
And this time it's Mafi who's taking the kick. And Mafi's kicked it well across field, a long way away from the goal post. It seems they take these kicks in turn, but they're not successful as far as goal kicking is concerned, because Tonga's 8 points consist of 2 tries to Australia's 1 try and a penalty goal. And we see about 3 minutes and a bit to go to half-time. McGill taking the drop out for Australia. And a deep one to Sami Latu again, and Latu after it. Can he get to it? He can't. It's into touch. The Australians looking for a score before half-time, only 3 minutes to go. Now, with Latu touching that ball, it means that it's a throw into Australia, and Stevens has it.
Australia are desperate to score here, because they obviously will want to turn in front at half-time. So we can expect an all-out effort from Australia from this line-out.
And Garrick Fay jumping high for Australia in the middle of the line-out. Now here's the chance. Richardson along the far side. There's Cole coming through, and it's taken by the Tongans. Knock-ons there, but play on, advantage rule, and recall by the referee.
Well, a good effort by Australia, but it almost gave Tonga, had that ball been gathered on the first bounce by one of the Tongan players. There was 2 or 3 players outside there unmarked, and it would have been dangerous for Australia.
Malakai for Tonga to Valita, the fullback. And Valita's kick is not going to be in touch. McGill may have a drop-it goal from here. And McGill's drop-it goal is a great kick, but just wide. That was only a fraction away from the goal posts.
Well, there you get an idea of just how the Tongans played. Had that been probably any other international side in a desperate position 2 minutes before half-time, there is little doubt the fullback would have slammed that ball right out. But Valita just kicked it up in a rather haphazard way and had his side in trouble.
That's Lone for Australia, number 8. Now Tyndall caught by Mafi, and they're driving through. Richardson, Stegman's kick is going almost straight across field. Underneath it is Isikeli, and Isikeli crash tackled and recalled by the referee for a set scrum. The ball coming forward from the tackle, so it's a scrum about 15 metres inside the Tongan half, about 60 seconds to half time, with Tonga in front, 8 points to 7. Isikeli not getting up from that tackle, which is not surprising. They really hit him. Isikeli has shown really good form on the tour so far, the winger on the far side.
And it appears as though he may have injured his ankle. The way the tackle was made, I would have thought that it would have been across the chest, or he would have been winded. But he was a bit unlucky. The player coming up, and I think it was Cole, obviously did the right thing by going into the man. And of course the ball had just left Isikeli when Cole arrived on the scene.
Play on, the scrum to pack down 15 metres inside the Tongan half, about a minute to go to half time. Off the pack goes Lone to Cole on the far side, and Cole back in field to Tyndall. Still going inside the 22-metre line. Over this side to Richardson. The full-back line's here. Stegman, the full-back's in. And a chance for the Tongans onto this loose ball. Sami Latu. That's stopped by the referee, and a scrum to go down just outside the Tongan 22-metre line.
Must be only seconds to go now, and the Tongans will be striving to keep Australia out. Australia will want this ball.
Ha'onga caught by Tyndall. And there's the half-time bell. So at half-time, Tonga leads Australia by 8 points to 7. For Tonga, tries by Mafi, the captain, number 8, and Latu, that's Sami Latu, the winger, number 11. For Australia, a try to Tyndall, a penalty goal to McGill. That's the position at half-time. Tonga 8, Australia 7. The start of the second half, we have some surprising figures for the first half of the match. The Tongans won the lineouts by 8-6, and that's the first time they've ever had the advantage in lineouts. They also took one tight head to nil in the scrums, but the penalties favoured Australia 5 points to 3. So a win to the Tongans in the lineout is the first time, I should think, right through this tour they've done that. McGill kicking off for Australia. Australia trailing by 1 point at half-time. And Tuihalamaka breaking away from the second row. And the Tongans driving up over halfway. Here's McGill for Australia, and McGill's kick is going to be in touch on the full, so back it goes. Over halfway, about 12 metres inside the Australian half. And the referee not satisfied as Malakai was breaking away for Tonga, the 5'8". It becomes a scrum inside the Australian half. Penalty Australia. Well, the Australians had the ball, but they've received a penalty. And Tyndall may take a tap kick here. Tyndall moving in for the tap to Richardson. Now to the forwards, that's Graham, number 1. Howard, his fellow front rower. And the Australians going for a quick heel, and Tyndall caught, and again a penalty going to Australia.
Well, there's an indication Australia are going to try and bullock this a little bit and try and drag the Tongans in. They took the tap, and they sent Graham on his way so that he could race upfield about 20 metres and so that they could form a ruck. Well, it didn't quite come off for them. They did everything correctly. And, of course, the Tongan player was offside. So we can expect, I think we can expect some tight forward play from the Australian pack for the early moments, or probably the first 15 minutes. They might open up down in the quarter there, but they'll try and tighten it up.
Tyndall to Richardson. Now Stegman, number 12, to Lestrange, 13. There's Stevens on the far side, and Stevens well tackled. Stegman onto the loose ball. And into touch on the far side, about 5 metres inside the Tongan half. And that's the first time, I think, in the whole game that Stevens has received the ball on the end of a backline movement. Garrick Fay for Australia, number 4, middle of the line out. Tyndall going for the kick, it's driving through. This is the second row, Tuihalamaka. It's Tyndall. Back to Valita on his own 22-metre line. And Valita has pushed this right up to the far end of the field, and it's Richardson back for Australia, and Richardson right back to his own line. And Richardson is going to find touch. He does, but it puts the Tongans in a good attacking position.
Well, just 5 minutes gone of the second half. Tonga leading 8 points to 7, and Tonga going fairly well in the 5 minutes that we've had in this half.
Richardson. And finding touch up towards halfway. Well, the punch thrown at the end of the line out there, and number 7 for Australia, the team captain, was the man who threw the punch, and he's apologised to his opposing number. That's Selupe, the breakaway forward. And here's Peter Sullivan being called out by referee Burnett. And there was no doubt about that. That was a looping right-hand punch. It was right out in the open.
And you noticed that Peter Sullivan was indicating to the referee that he wasn't happy that the Tongan player at the back of the line out was pulling his jersey. And because you can get your jersey pulled and you can still get then penalised for that, but you also get penalised for throwing a haymarker.
And it's an up and under. The Tongans charging through on this. Sullivan underneath it. Sullivan was the man who took it. Scrum to pack down just inside the Australian 22-metre line. Tonga in front by 8 points to 7, 5 minutes into the second half. Richardson. And Australia in trouble. McGill recovering, but the Australian team not looking that good.
Well, they're having a very unhappy time in the back line there. They've really shown us nothing today, and we must give credit for the Tongan players. They're harassing the Australian backs and doing a very good job, and Australia finding it difficult to do anything about it.
Well, Sullivan winning the ball for Australia. Here's Richardson. And Richardson finding touch up towards halfway. But that was purely defensive football. And Australia's the team trailing by 1 point. Tonga in front, 8-7. Sullivan again, number 7. Sullivan asking his forwards to form a good ruck. And a penalty goes to Australia. Number 5 there, that's the second rower, Tuihalamaka, went right round the ruck, so he was offsides. It's a penalty, Australia, possibly a shot at goal.
Yes, McGill coming up, and he's going to take a shot. Just about 5 or 6 metres inside the Tongan half. Fairly long distance kick. Not an easy one for him. Still problem with the breeze. But Australia not looking at all happy at the moment. It's only been some good defensive kicking by Richardson and McGill that have managed to get Australia out of their own quarter. And Tonga indicated when they took that up and under just a while ago that there might be more of those coming up as the game progresses.
And McGill's kick is a good-looking kick. It's going to be close, but falling short. And the clearing kick into touch, and still inside the Tongan 22-metre line. We've had 4 line-outs in the second half. Australia's won them all, so now Australia in front in the line-out score by 10-8. This time it's the Tongan ball. Ha'unga's kick charged down. Away goes Tuihalamaka, number 5. And recalled by the referee for a scrum to pack down right on the Tongan 22-metre line.
Well, Tuihalamaka had almost broken the backline defence there, and at first I thought he was going to kick it, and had he kicked it, with the wind assistance, Australia would have been, I reckon, right back near at their own quarter.
Stegman to Richardson. Here's Lestrange. Lestrange with Cole, and Cole trying to use his pace, and Well taken by Isikeli, his opposing number.
Whilst you didn't get all the players in your picture then, but when Isikeli was taken, when Cole was taken, there were 4 or 5 red jersey Tongan players there. This was good cover defence.
Australia moving to Richardson. Here's Lestrange. Lestrange coming back to link with his forwards. Now Tyndall. Tyndall dummy into Lone. No, number 8. Tyndall again. Out on this side. McGill's there with Lestrange. Here's McGill. McGill and Cole. Cole for the corner. Should be a try. Try to Australia. 11 points to 8. Australia in front.
Well, probably Tonga could consider themselves a little unlucky, but because they looked as though they were going to get out of the problem. But the ball went to ground. Tyndall handled a couple of times, and of course sent it back to the right of play, where he obviously could sense that their gaps were opening up. And of course, with McGill up in the line, they had the extra player, and McGill delayed his pass perfectly for Cole to go over in the corner. So Australia have fought their way back, and it's been quite a struggle in the second half to get back and add points. They've hit the front. It's now 11-8, but it's taken them 10 minutes of struggling to get back there, and I would say they've only been down there in that 10 minutes in the Tongan quarter for about 2 minutes of the 10 minutes. It hasn't been easy for them, and if Tonga can get down into the Australian quarter and get a little possession, certainly anything could happen.
And McGill this time may land this one. This is close. That's a good kick. No, just away to the right again. And the Australians hold this lead of 11 points to 8. And by the way, Eric Tyndall scored the first try for Australia after 10 minutes in the first half. And John Cole has scored the second try after 10 minutes in the second half. But it's 2 tries all, and the only difference is a penalty goal to McGill to give them that 3-point lead. Valita, number 15, to kick off. Lone for Australia. Richardson. And a long angle kick right deep into Tongan territory. That's bouncing back in field, perhaps. Yes, it is. And Isikeli dropping it. Well, that's given Australia a great chance here. Isikeli had that ball, but he's dropped it. And look where the corner post is, only a couple of metres out.
And so the pressure now is back on the Tongan side again. They just can't gather the ball quickly enough, and back on the halfway mark they just couldn't gather it. They had their chances but couldn't gather it, and so consequently Australia are now a few metres out.
Tyndall for Australia. Sullivan acting at half-back. Here's Sullivan, number 7. Australian forwards forming a good ruck here. Tyndall with no winger on this side. And the penalty goes to Tonga. And Mafi's kick is not in touch. Here's McGill. McGill chasing this one. Down inside the 22-metre line. That's Mafi again. No, that's not Mafi, is it? That's the front row forward who was there. But Bloomfield trying to kick it away. And into touch now, but still inside the Tongan 22-metre line. Haunga's driving or kick through. That's Stevens for Australia. And Stevens with support, they're still going. Here's Haunga again. And Haunga's running it up here with support. This could be dangerous for Australia. Haunga, I don't think he should have kicked it that time. He had support outside, but that time for a change, he did something I didn't agree with. He shouldn't have kicked it. He could have gone on and ran with support outside.
he had Valita in support, and there was only one Australian player confronting them. And I think had he passed the ball, Valita, whilst he may not have got away from the cover defence, but he would have brought the ball down a lot further than it is now.
Ruled not in straight, so it becomes a scrum. Australia 11, Tonga 8, and we've had almost 15 minutes in the second half.
Tonga at the moment starting to make a few silly mistakes that are getting them into trouble.
And the kick by Isikeli into touch straight off his boot, so it's on the 22-metre line, Tongan territory. It's Faye for Australia. And a penalty going to Australia. One of the forwards coming through offside, Hehepoto, the front row, is the man number 1, and a fairly obvious penalty, so a chance again for Australia to increase the score. And it seems that Richardson is going to take the shot at goal.
Yes, it's Richardson to take this kick. Well, McGill has not been terribly successful, although his goal kicks haven't been bad. They've been fairly close, particularly his last one looked as though it was going to make it. I think the kickers are having trouble with the gusty breeze and wind. Let's see what Richardson can do.
McGill so far 1 out of 6, which isn't a very good kicking effort. And Richardson, that could be close, but it's veering away again. Yes, veering away with the wind and running from their own line. Here goes Isikeli. He's going to run this, and Isikeli will not find touch. It's over on the far side. Stevens caught, and well done by the Tongans. So Australia leading by 11 points to 8, just over 15 minutes in the second half.
And if Tonga are to get themselves back into the game, it's the same old story. They must get possession and retain it a little longer than they have been. They're just making a few handling mistakes at very vital times and allowing Australia to race the ball back.
Now, Pat just knocked back, and Sullivan coming through for Australia. Here's Valita, and Valita's kick is up over halfway. Back for it is Cole and McGill. McGill on his own 22-metre line. And his kick is in touch on the full, so the Tongans moving into Australian territory.
And a while since we've seen the Tongans down here.
It's time for the front of the line, and Ha'unga going through with this instruction there in the line out, and a penalty goes to Australia. Penalties favouring Australia, 10-5. McGill finding touch well over halfway. It's Garrick Fay again for Australia. Graham. Back to Fay. Well, the Tongans appear to have learned the lesson of forward play. They're faring much better in those loose exchanges than they have in previous matches.
A little bit of tight play, of course, suits Australia.
And a penalty. Tyndall finally became part of the Tongan scrum that time, so it's a penalty going to Tonga. And Mafi's kick is, yes, he's found touch, taken play over halfway. Well, down towards the 22-metre line down the far end of the field, one of the Tongan players, the front rower, Ualeni Pahulu, is down with an injury.
Well, fortunately, the game hasn't had a lot of injuries, and so the game has been flowing fairly well. But back here at the moment, the Australian forwards are getting a lecture from Peter Sullivan. He's just broken them up now, and I don't think that Sullivan can be very, very happy about the way things are going. Fair enough, Australia in front, 11 points to 8. We've got about 21 minutes of play to go, so he is in front. But I don't think he's getting the response from the tightness from his forwards, and of course when they do get it, the backs are not making full use of it. He's been lucky that, or the Australian side have been lucky, should I say, that they've been able to clear the ball and capitalise on a few of the handling errors that the Tongans have been making.
Well, the line out 10 metres inside the Australian half. And this time a Tongan ball. Malakai out to Tali. Here's Foliaki to the far side to Sami Latu. Sami Latu is still going. Very strong runner. And recalled by the referee for a scrum. So just 20 minutes to go. Australia in front, 11 points to 8. And Australia starting to dominate the lineouts. In the second half, they've won 9-2. McGill working the blind side, but a lack of liaison there between the halfback and the fullback. Nothing wrong with the pass, but McGill just wasn't there.
If Tonga could get some ball, we could see a very exciting finish, because 3 points is not much in a test match.
Again, the pass wide of McGill coming through fast on the fullback. Is the breakaway forward, that's Selupe, and McGill finding touch, but it's inside the Australian 22-metre line. And fundamental errors creeping into the Australian game.
Certainly an Australian side that is not at all settled down. There seems to be a complete lack of cohesion in this half.
That's Sullivan at the end of the line out. Tyndall trying to work the blind side. Out here to the Tongans, and they're still going. Here's on the back line, that's Mafi. Mafi again, but a series of knock-ons there, so it becomes a scrum.
There again we saw an example of just how today the Tongans are not quite able to pick the ball up in the first second that they should snap the ball up.
Hold up here, it looks like Bloomfield, the Tongan hooker, who's the injured man on the far side.
And looking very groggy too. Quite a sturdy player, and he seems to be all right, just as well as not a broken neck.
Well, Mafi just snapping his head back into place. Lane not coming off, number 8. Again, Tyndall, not a good pass. Isikeli, but it's in touch. Well, a minute's ticking away, about 17 minutes to go now, with Australia a 3-point lead, 11 points to 8.
And the game in the last 10 or 15 minutes has really fallen away to a very slow walk.
And here goes the halfback, and he's still going, getting a good bounce and almost onto that one. Cole for Australia, and the Tongans on tearing through, but it's been recalled for the first infringement as Cole went sailing down to the ground. the first infringement, the knock-on, the referee allowing to see if there was any advantage to Australia. Well, certainly there was no advantage to Cole. Stegman caught by the breakaway. That's number 6, Valu. The Tongans might have the Australians a bit rattled here, although the Australians are leading by 3 points. To McGill. Not finding touch. This is Valita. And Valita, a peculiar kick. And Sullivan for Australia. That's Cox. On the far side, we have Stevens. Stevens keeping in play, but here's Malakai, the 5'8". Now if he can break away from here, the Tongans will be dangerous. Out here to Tali on the far side of Isikeli. And Isikeli still going. Isikeli goes down under the full-back in front. Isikeli, straight to McGill. And McGill comes up. Well, how often has that happened? The ball was kicked straight into McGill's hands, and Isikeli well on the way towards a try.
Looks as though, I think it's Howard, is it, the front rower? Yes, Howard, the Australian front rower, is down there with an injured leg. Well, there again we saw just how unlucky the Tongan side can be, and just, as I mentioned earlier, some of the foolish things that they can do. I don't think we've seen a worse kick than the one that Valita attempted on the far side. Had room and decided, I'm sure, to kick it with his left foot, and I don't think he likes kicking with his left foot, but it was a foolish one. Almost had them in a lot of trouble because Australia swept onto the ball, but fortunately for Tonga, it bounced their way, and they unleashed the backline movement. The attempted cross kick by Isikeli was well thought out. He was covered by the cover defence, but there again he kicked it straight to McGill, and McGill was able to relieve a rather embarrassing situation that was developing for the Australian side, and things at the moment are getting quite embarrassing, I think, for the Australian side. I can't quite work out just what's happening. They've got the forward power there, but they're not playing well enough, and of course they're not clearing the ball quickly enough to their backs, and the centres are standing flat-footed and are being caught.
Well, Tongan ball to Malakai, to Foliaki. His kick across the far side. Sami Latu's going fast. The bounce important. Latu's almost onto it. Now Tali Kavapalu kicking it back into midfield. That's Richardson, and Richardson well tackled. Now a lot of Tongans here. Right on the 22-metre line in midfield, Australian territory. And it could be Tongan ball. Out this side, there's Mafi for Isikeli, can't take it. Advantage will, but the scrum. And Howard shaving up to Isikeli. Of course, that was as far as it went, but this is becoming a very interesting game with 15 minutes still to go, or just under that, and Australia just in front, 11 points to 8. Injured player, 5'8", Richardson.
Looks as though he also has a leg injury. The Tongan players are lifting their game a little bit. I think that if Australia are going to score any points, and they're just as likely to score them from their own 25, but if they do score, they'll make it out of a Tongan mistake. The Tongan players are inclined to get very excited when they move into the Australian quarter, and we saw this in Sydney in the first test, where they made a lot of bad mistakes when they got close to the try line. They get a bit excited, they're inclined to drop the ball. Australia's chances at the moment of getting out of there are to capitalise on these mistakes.
So play on, that's the 22-metre line, Australian territory on the right-hand side. Tyndall's kick is going to be still in play.
You saw Isikeli come in there. They certainly don't mind crashing into anyone.
I see Richardson limping about, not too happy in the Australian team. I notice Russell Fairfax has moved into the dressing room, no doubt to change into his uniform, so there may be a replacement for Australia.
Well, Well, let me say this. I think Richardson is not very happy about his ankle. Russell Fairfax has just moved into the dressing room, but he was in his ordinary clothes. I'm rather surprised that he is not in his football gear waiting to go on.
Richardson just testing that leg, play on the scrum, very close to the sideline on this side. Now held in by the Tongans.
Got 15 minutes to go, and Tonga have been in down near the Australian quarter line for quite some time. And you want a little bit of possession, and as we keep saying with the Tongans, anything could happen.
And through they come on to Tyndall, catching him there, number 7, Selupe.
Well, if Peter Sullivan ever had a job on his hands, he's got it on his hands now. He's in front, 11 points to 8. That's a handy enough lead. But the job is to get out of that quarter, because the Tongans, here's a chance for them.
Well, here's a penalty going to Tonga. This will make it 11-all if they take this attempted penalty. It's an easy one. It's about halfway between the sideline and the uprights. It's Valita to attempt the shot, and we have about 12 minutes to go. Now, it looks like he's going to take a drop at goal, perhaps, or no, he's going back a bit, giving himself a better angle at the posts.
Well, you get a fair idea of the picture of what the distance is. Came back outside the 22-metre mark to widen the angle of the posts. Probably take his time on this one. It's an important kick. He can make the scores level, and just on 11 minutes of play to go. Very important, and of course I think he will take his time. He stands the ball straight up. We mentioned earlier that the Tongans haven't shown good goal-kicking form on this tour, and but if there was ever a vital one for Valita, this is the one.
That's wide, yes, not a good kick, so no change in score. Australia still leading by 11 points to 8 and 11 minutes to go.
Well, it wasn't a good kick by any means, and a lot of pressure was on Valita, of course. But Australia still got to get out of the danger zone.
Drop out by McGill. Far side to Mafi, and here they come. There's plenty of support here. Mafi still going, and down to the 22-metre line. Who's onto it? The ball going forward from the tackle to play on. The breakaway Valu, and here on this side to Isikeli. It's a try. Try to Isikeli. $12 points to 11. Tonga in front. Now that's the breakaway forward who's injured. That's Valu.
Yes, the player injured. Well, as far as the try was concerned, I do feel that in the middle of it, there was a knock-on by Tonga. No doubt about it. It was a very difficult one probably for the referee to see, but it was about 10 metres out. The ball was knocked forward by one of the Tongans. Another Tongan player swooped on it. I reckon it went about 2 feet forward. And then out along the back line. But that's what happens in test matches. That's how test matches are won. And the Tongan side grabbed the opportunity to was there, and of course the winger made no mistake about it. Now, Tongan player injured, and Tonga have hit the front with 9 minutes to go. 12 points to 11 in favour of Tonga, and the attempted conversion to be made from about, I'd say, would be less than half a metre. There it is, and there you can see the sideline, and he's about 3 or 4 metres from the 22-metre line. So Tonga have fought back and hit the front, and this was on the way that the Australians have been playing.
Well, a change of kicker. The man who scored the try is going to attempt to kick the goal. This is the third man we've seen, and the kicker is the winger Isikeli. Almost kicked it straight across field, nowhere near the goal post, about 20 metres away. So the game full of interest. 9 minutes to go, 1 point the difference. Tonga 12, Australia 11.
Well, if we're to see an Australian fight back, it's got to come from now, and they still have the forward strength to do it.
Well, the kick-off not going the required distance, so the Tongans have the option of the kick or the scrum. They're going to take the scrum on the halfway point.
By the way, the roar that went up here when Tonga scored, you would have thought that everyone was barracking for Tonga.
And Tonga so far 3 tries to 2. There's Ma'ake. Kick straight downfield to McGill. And McGill's going to run this to the far side to Stevens. Stevens, who's hardly touched the ball all day. Line out 10 metres inside the Australian half. Tyndall to Stevens, and Stevens to Mafi, and that's found touch. Yes, a good one from Stevens, taking play right over halfway. And the breeze appears to have swung round now to favour the Tongans. It's an unusual breeze, but I think it's blowing from a different direction in the last 5 minutes or so.
Yes, I think it's inclined to come more directly down the field now than it was previously.
Now Richardson to Stegman. Here's Cole coming back in field. Cole driving down to the 22-metre line. Now Australia wants this ruck. Well, the referee's whistle has gone, so it becomes a scrum. Loose head Tonga. 7 minutes to go. And Ha'unga's kick from half-back, yes, a safe one, taking it right up to halfway. Frey winning the ball, the fullbacks joining in this time. This is Stegman. Stegman kicking across to this side. Isikeli straight back downfield. Here's McGill. And McGill forced on the defensive, finding touch, but the Tongans are in front, remember, and we have only 6 minutes to go. Tonga 12, Australia 11.
Well, a few of the Tongan kicks are starting to come off, and they're forcing the Australians back into their own half.
Injured man is the Tongan breakaway, Selupe, number 7. He's going to play on.
Whilst he's coming back, I must comment that Richardson appears to be okay at 5'8" now.
Now, Australian ball, extra man Cole from this wing. There's Cole, number 14. Lestrange to Stevens. Stevens, well crashed tackle. That's the fullback who's made those tackles before, and it's a penalty going to Tonga. Well, that was a kamikaze tackle, that one. He took him headlong and never looked like missing him. He dived at him.
He's a devastating tackler, there's no doubt about it. And one of the hardest tackles to do is that one, where you've got to come boring in straight on to your opponent. And I thought Norman described it quite aptly there. That was a tremendous tackle and must have shaken every bone in Stevens' body. But fortunately, Stevens is back there. He's quite okay. And now Tonga with a penalty, long way out, but being sensible, provided they follow this ball up. They're taking up time, But if they follow this ball up, they can nullify any Australian move. But if they give Australia too much room, they'll probably run it out.
Well, Mafi's kick straight to Carberry, the Australian hooker, and Carberry kicking it downfield. Here's Valita, and Valita into touch, yes, finding touch, but it's inside the Tongan half. Now, any penalty here gives the Australians a chance. It's about 15 metres inside Tongan territory. Just under 5 minutes to go. 1 point the difference. Australia trailing by 11 points to 12. Fay winning those lineouts. Big jumping. McGill's coming in. Here's Stegman. Out to McGill on this side. McGill has Cole with him. Cole for the corner. Look at the defenders coming across. There's 3 or 4 of them. And a beautiful tackle by Latu. Latu number 11. Sami Latu made the tackle. But 4 or 5 Tongans flying across and cover defence. And that was a very spectacular movement.
Fine tackle, and there must have been 6 or 7 Tongan players there all coming across together, and Cole had no chance of scoring. He looked as though he had a chance, but back in the background were a lot of players waiting for him.
And away go the Tongans again. The ball's still in play, and McGill forced into touch. And the crowd really warming up to this now. About 3.5 minutes to go. Tonga 12, Australia 11. And this crowd is a good crowd. When we look around this ground, we could say all of 10,000 watching this match, which has become very exciting in the last 7 or 8 minutes. Australian forwards taking it through, but knocked on by Cox. It was number 6 who led the charge. Unga, Malakai, good tactics, taking it over the head of the forwards, bouncing towards the sideline. Here's McGill, and McGill infield to Cole. Cole knocking on, a great chance for the Tongans. That could be a penalty. They're playing on. Out into the back line. Foliaki to knock on, play on, advantage will to Australia. And the Australians moving this side. And straight up in the air it goes, and back they come onto this. Here's Ha'unga keeping it in play, and into touch it goes.
Well, plenty of life there, and some rather vigorous and pretty solid tackles by both sides. But the Tongan players are really flying and chasing this ball with 2 minutes to go.
Yes, 2 minutes to go. Tonga 12, Australia 11. And in front of us here in the crowd, we can see Tongan supporters jumping up and down. They're extremely happy. This could be a sensational win. Fullbacks in. Stegman to Lestrange. Fullback McGill, and McGill flattened. Far side we have Stevens and Sami Latu. And McGill hasn't moved from that last tackle. That was a perfectly authentic tackle, but it was very, very solid.
Well, one can only say that if McGill decides never to come back up in the back line again, I wouldn't blame him after that one, because that was an almighty tackle.
This is the front rower for Tonga, Ualeni Pahulu. He's not too happy there, so in the closing moments, when these injuries are treated, I should think about 60 seconds, perhaps more, to go. Not much more, a minute and a half, and Australia trailing by 1 point.
Well, Australia are starting to attempt, and that's about the only word I can say at this stage, to launch their back line into play. But the new lease of life that the Tongans suddenly have developed since they hit the front is putting a stop to any real hope that Australia have. But, as Norman has said, probably 90 seconds to go, so Australia must throw every attacking movement into the game as much as they possibly can.
Ha'unga, and Ha'unga's little kick is through to McGill. McGill still going up over the 22-metre line, keeping the ball in play across the midfield. Foliaki and Lestrange onto it very well. The Australians looking for a good heel this time. Richardson, here's Stegman. Stegman with Stevens. Stevens has Cole with him. Back to Cole, and Cole knocking on. Away they go, the Tongans. This could be a try. It's Tali Kavapalu. This could be a great try. Richardson won't get him. It's a try. fantastic. Look at the Tongans. They're jumping up and down. They're doing somersaults. They're turning circles. They've done everything. The Tongans have gone completely wild. It's 16 points to 11. And the try scorer was number 13, Tali Kavapalu, a run for 50 metres.
A great try. Australia launching their final attack of the moment, and that's about the final. Will be the end of the game, I'm sure. But Stevens came from the other wing, raced in, joined up with Cole. Cole was there. Stevens put a flick pass inside, which went to ground, and of course Tali snapped it up, ran from the halfway mark with Richardson chasing, but it was a vain hope for Richardson to catch him, and there was the score. And I'm sure as soon as this kick's taken, we'll probably hear the final bell.
Well, Captain Mafi has the honour of kicking for goal, and let's see how it goes. Not a good kick, but that doesn't matter very much. There's the full-time whistle, the full-time bell, and Tonga has beaten Australia. Just look at the Tongans. They're jumping up and down. They're extremely happy, and of course they're the heroes of all the crowd here. They've defeated Australia by 16 points to 11. It was the 150th Test match in which Australia has played. It's the second only in which Tonga has played against Australia, and of course Tonga's finest, I should think, international win in their history in rugby union. For Tonga, we've had tries by the captain, number 8, Sione Mafi, the winger, number 11, Sami Latu, the other winger, number 14, Isikeli Vave, and finally that great try by the centre, number 13, Tali Kavapalu. 4 tries to Tonga, and that's the points they made, 16. 4 fours are 16, and no goals kicked at all. For Australia, tries by Tyndall and Cole, McGill a penalty goal. So 2 tries to Australia plus a penalty goal, Tonga scoring 4 tries. Lineouts to Australia, 22 to 13. The penalties favoured Australia, 10 to 8, and the tight heads to Tonga. But here's the applause for the Tongans as they leave the scene here at Ballymore. A very fine performance, defeating Australia by 16 points to 11. And generous applause from everyone here at Ballymore for a match that may not have been spectacular right through, but certainly the last 10, 12 minutes made it